Drake Lucas here with ToughPicks.com. As you may have heard, the Jim Henson Company is holding an auction later this month. They are letting go of more than 400 items, including puppets, props, and memorabilia. Items range from an Uncle Traveling Matt puppet and shoes worn by Miss Piggy to a Crunchy Stars cereal box. That puppet from the Hoobs, you know the one. That's in there too. We took the opportunity to sit down with Karen Falk to get answers to fans' questions about the auction and some of the stories behind the items that are up for sale. A full list of auction items can be found on the Julian's Auctions website. I am very pleased to welcome Karen Falk, Archives Director for the Jim Henson Company, to talk more about the auction and how it came about.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So, can you give a little background on what you do for the Jim Henson Company?
So, as director of the archives, I'm in charge of all of our archival activities. So that the very most basic level is collecting and preserving items for our archives. But then on a much, more active scale, I work with museums to do exhibits, with people who are doing books to help support their work, or we create books in-house ourselves. We do a lot of stuff with our corporate communications and marketing and PR to make sure people know our story and know about our history and make connections between our current projects and our historical projects. So I do a variety of things, but all related to the history of the company and our effort to help fans connect with our history and maybe take inspiration from Jim Henson and, of course, all the people that work here now and create our programming now.
And how long have you been with the Jim Henson Company?
33 years I've been here. And I have a great staff.
Is there something that drew you in particular to work at the Jim Henson Archives, or was it something you fell into?
Before I came to Henson, I worked for Christie's Auction House. So this auction is kind of full circle for me. But our offices were down the block from the Muppet Workshop. And I used to see the puppet makers walking up and down the street wearing jackets with Kermit the Frog on the back. And I used to think, well, boy, wouldn't it be fun to work for Henson? But I really didn't see an intersection of what I did and what they did until I saw an advertisement for the exhibition department and followed that lead and ended up getting hired by Jane Henson, Mrs. Henson, to do the archives.
And when we talk about the archives, how big are the archives?
Our media collection is in LA, and that, we have a database with like 95,000 items in it, which could be a tape or a reel of film or something. Plus, we have a big photo archive that's both digital and physical out in Los Angeles. Here in New York, we mostly collect production materials and design work, art, flat art, files, scripts, that kind of thing, correspondence, as well as we have Jim Henson's papers and framed art and licensed product that's in storage off-site. And of course, now we have a big digital archive as well, because so much is now created digitally. So our scripts and things like that are digital.
For the auction, why decide to do an auction now?
Over the years, we've made this effort to sort through our puppets because, to be honest, they're the hardest to care for, and they require the most specialized storage and that sort of thing. We've talked about doing a museum or having a museum, and we decided to partner with existing institutions to share Jim's story. And it's actually worked out much better than I ever imagined than having a freestanding museum. But we have several institutions that have permanent Jim Henson collections. So the Museum of the Moving Image, which you know well, the Center for Puppetry Arts in Atlanta, the Smithsonian in Washington. We've given quite a few things to the Museum of Pop Culture in Seattle. And then the Academy Museum has Dark Crystal and Labyrinth items. So we've been able to sort of spread the wealth and make sure that people can learn about the Henson story in different contexts with different historical focuses. We still have lots and lots of stuff here. And it's always an effort to figure out, how best to store it, share it, utilize it. After the end of the production for Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, everything went into storage. And then that was in the UK. And then we closed our London storage. So we moved everything here. And we chose a really robust selection of items for our archives. And the Netflix archives also chose a big collection because the show is on Netflix, and they have a nice archive division. And then we also reached out to all the museums that we worked with to offer them items. So the Museum of the Moving Image has a big collection. Center for Puppetry Arts has a big collection. Mopop in Seattle has a big collection. We gave a couple to the Victoria and Albert Museum. But even after all of that archiving and making sure all the most special items are saved, we ended up having a lot left over. You know, it was the biggest puppet production ever. So that's really what got us thinking about, what is the best way to, sort of ensure that these items will go on. And it seemed like sharing them with fans was going to be the way to do it. So originally it was just the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance stuff, but then we also started reviewing our storage and realized that we really had a lot of material that it didn't make sense to keep holding on to. Although, of course, the auction only has 400 and something lots. And, we have tens of thousands of items in our collection.
How did you go about choosing which ones to put up for auction?
Well, we wanted to represent sort of the entire history of the company. So we wanted to have something from most productions or related to at least most character groups and that kind of thing. And we knew as we prepared for our new Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock series, that we still had a lot of Fraggle Rock stuff in storage that had not been accessed for literally decades. So that was a place to start to look for other puppets that we would want to sell, because that's the biggest group of puppets, I think, that we have in the auction. We again have given lots and lots of Fraggles to many museums. We have them in our archive collection, but there were a lot that we were able to choose to include in the auction. And then we started just sort of going through our storage inventories, not even so much archives, but from our production storage as well, which is sort of where things go after a production. And we were able to, really find some great things that we could include that would be really representative of the different character groups.
When you include puppets, is there any special preparation you need to do for them to put them up for auction?
Oh, absolutely. Every single puppet that we pulled, including the new ones from Age of Resistance, got, sort of restored by our creature shop. The newer puppets didn't really need very much work, but we want them to look good. But the older ones, like the Fraggles, they were all, the interior of 40-year-old puppets is crumpled foam. And so all of that foam was replaced and they were cleaned. If there were missing parts or anything, that was repaired. And then everything was mounted on custom made stands by our creature shop. So everything would look its best.
And were all these used in production?
Yes. Yeah. 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 Everything.
Is there anything that you're really excited about that's in the auction?
Well, there's different things. I think all of the stuff from Fraggle Rock is so special, and each Fraggle has so much personality, and I think they're just a really wonderful representation of that brand, in effect. I mean, whether it was from the original show, I mean, we don't have anything from the new show in the sale, but I think the sort of longevity of these characters and how they continue to have an impact is because of the charm of their design and everything. I think you see that in the ones that are in the sale, and of course the Doozer is so special because he's just adorable. It's funny because my husband was saying, "Oh, well, he's so small relative to the Fraggles." I said, "Well, a Doozer is knee high to a Fraggle, so of course, that's the size he's going to be in real life too." So I think all of that Fraggle Rock material is really special. There's a poster in the exhibit. It's sort of small, but it's from the Muppet Valentine's show. And the artwork was done by Ted Kokonis, who was a Hollywood poster designer. He did Fiddler on the Roof. I mean, a few really, really famous ones. And of course, he did the artwork for the Labyrinth poster.
Sure.
But this was back, in the early 70s that he did this poster for Jim, and it's always been a favorite of mine when I see it in the archives. So I was really happy that we were able to include one in the sale.
Is there anything that you've been surprised about that was more popular than you expected?
Well, we worked with the Henson family to find some items that were personal to Jim. And so they looked in their home in London and what they have in their homes here in the States and chose some items that they thought would be of interest to fans and that they, I guess, were willing to part with. And one of them was something that Jim had in his office from the original Hollywood sign. It was a part of a fundraiser to help preserve the Hollywood sign. And I was kind of surprised that that's gone as high as it has already. But I think people are interested in Jim Henson and what he was interested in, and anything personal to him is meaningful to fans.
Aside from the props, the costumes, puppets from production, there's some things that really speak to the history of Jim Henson, the Muppets, the importance of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of something like the Muppet Stuff banner. Can you
Right.
talk a little bit about what the Muppet Stuff was?
Well, Muppet Stuff was a retail store that was on Lexington Avenue around 64th Street, something like that in Manhattan. And it was a store where the licensing department could showcase all the different products from all the different brands. And at the time, Jim was very involved in the whole licensing side of things. He loved the idea of seeing his characters out there in the world in these different products. And there was a big art department that made a huge effort to ensure the quality of the products, how the characters were depicted, that it was always looked great. And so there was a lot of pride in sort of the creation of these products and the dispersal of them. And so it was great to be able to have a retail store where you could find Fraggle items and Sesame items and Muppet items and all under one roof. It was sort of ahead of its time. It was before there was a Disney store or Warner Brothers store or any of those, M&M store or whatever. But it was just down the street, and so the staff at the store was like part of the company. And there was a yearbook. There's one in the sale, the amphibian, that was kind of a parody of a high school yearbook, but it was for the company in 1986, around the time they were celebrating the 30th anniversary. And the Muppet Stuff store staff is in the yearbook, and they were part of the company. So there was a lot of love for it. I think the banner probably hung outside the store at some point, although I don't have documentation of that. But it was fun to find things like that in our storage that we didn't ever showcase.
That's great. I wish that store existed now. Make it so much easier
Yeah.
than internet searches. Another thing that caught my eye was it was an invitation to one of the masquerade balls.
In the 1980s, Jim hosted 3 or 4 masquerade balls. I think it started when he was in London. He had a sort of a Renaissance themed party. And I don't know whether it was on the occasion of his new home there, or I can't remember exactly, but I think he really enjoyed this sort of fancy dress costume party. And so he hosted a couple of these masquerade balls in New York and invited celebrities and friends, family, that kind of thing. So they were really carefully planned. A lot of thought went into them. And of course, they each had a distinct invitation that went with whatever the theme of the night was. So it's fun to have those kind of corporate memorabilia pieces in the auction, or the set of Christmas cards, I think is really nice. I think a lot of collectors have over the years been able to find this card or that card online or something, but it's rare to have almost a full collection of the cards.
For Miss Piggy fans, there's some really fun items that show off her like massive diva power. Can you talk us through some of those items?
Sure. Well, that was the thing. We really wanted to make sure that Miss Piggy was represented in the auction, of course. I mean, how can you not? And we have those wonderful calendars that were art directed by Michael Frith that really showcase Piggy in the early 80s, when she really sort of came into her own as a true star, I would say. So it's really fun to have those calendars and then have some of the related items, like from the Miss Piggy's masterpieces from the Hermitage calendar photo shoot. We have some of the props and costumes that were so carefully made by our creature shop for those characters, for those photo shoots. We have that banner. I don't know if you saw that sort of Art Nouveau banner that
Beautiful. Yeah.
is so beautiful. And again, we had it in storage. We never used it for anything, historical. We never used it in an exhibit or anything because it was created for a toy fair party. When the Henson Company participated in licensing show or toy fair every year, they would usually host a big party. Usually it would have a theme. And so that year the theme was sort of La Belle Époque, Miss Piggy and the Art Nouveau style. And they created that banner. They used some of Michael Fritz's artwork for part of it, and then another artist embellished that, and then it's all hand painted. And it was just a decoration for a party. But it so captures her beauty and her spirit and the sort of overall care that was taken with her image over the years. So I think it's a really fun thing, but it's big. It's
Oh,
big.
is it?
So yeah, it's about 8 feet tall. So
Oh, wow. Okay. So more than life size of Biggie.
yeah, yeah.
It's interesting in the dark crystal items, dark crystal and dark crystal Age of Resistance really shows how everything was created. It created this whole world, down to the food and the side
Hmm.
tables and each little piece. Are there a few favorite items in there that you would want to highlight?
The puppets, of course, are so beautiful, but I love there's an essence file. It's sort of looks like it's glass with sort of decoration, and I feel like that really captures again the care and the design and the fabrication and everything. And it's, of course, an important part of the storyline. I love some of the little creatures. There are two thrush pogs in the exhibit. And again, it was this whole idea that Jim and Brian Froud had of a world where the plants were alive, or there wasn't necessarily a distinction between flora and fauna.
Right.
And the thrush pogs sort of grow out of the walls and things like that, but they're very much animals. I know at least one of them you can manipulate and make the face turn and what have you, but they were nicely mounted by our creature shop in Los Angeles. I think those are really great. In general, just looking at the props, which were made mostly by the art department on the production, and then the creatures that were made by our creature shop, you just see the care in terms of the craftsmanship that went into making these things. And then, of course, the design work, which is all based on Brian Froud's vision for that whole world of Thra.
You have some artwork from Carol Spinney in there.
Mm-hmm.
Carol Spinney, of course, best known as the original Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch, but of course also an artist. Can you talk a little bit about choosing to include those pieces?
We definitely, wanted to have Sesame Street items and represented because that's part of our 70-year history and a continuing part of our 70-year history. And I had been speaking with Debbie Spinney, who is Carol's wife, widow, and we were talking about Carol's artwork. He was, of course, a wonderful puppeteer, but he was also a wonderful painter and cartoonist and has a big body of work. She was saying, of course, she'd really love for people to see it and enjoy it. And is there a way to exhibit it? Or I don't know, we were sort of throwing around different ideas, and we had this auction coming up. So I talked to her about the idea of maybe we could include some items, and that way people would get to see his work, and we'd have a chance to also celebrate Sesame Street. It just seemed to be good timing and something that she was excited to do, and so we were happy to be able to open it up to have her join us.
Yeah, and there are some really, really fun pictures in there that are of the Sesame Street characters.
Yeah, yeah.
I know for a lot of fans, there's a little bit of a disappointment because the items are expensive. For a lot of fans that don't have hundreds or thousands of dollars to spend on these items, was there any thought given to do like a lottery for items, or one item that could help engage and bring fans into it a little bit more?
With this current sale or anything, I don't think, we would be able to do any kind of lottery or anything. But we really, really did try to make an effort to include lower priced items, really a range of prices. We knew the puppets would be expensive, but there's a lot of things in the auction that were estimated at under $500, even props and set pieces, but also, a lot of ephemera, brochures and scripts and things like that. Unfortunately, we can't control what things sell for. So if something's estimated at $300 to $500, if there's a lot of people that want it and are willing to pay for it, the price is going to go higher. So we can't really set those prices. But we really did try to include a range of things that were different prices. We also have worked with the Museum of the Moving Image and the Center for Puppetry Arts to try to put things, sort of duplicate items that we have, into their shops for sale, that to help raise money for the museums. And those things, have been available to buyers.
As someone who worked in the auction world, do you have any advice for people who are participating in the auction?
Often it's good to sort of wait until, closer to the auction date to decide, what kind of bidding you want to do, and you get a sense for the market. I think that if there is something that you're interested in, don't hesitate to reach out to Julian's to get more information. They will give you a condition report. They'll give you more details about, if you need more information about size or anything like that, or even shipping. I think something to keep in mind, we did the video about how to bid in an auction, and I hope everybody enjoyed that. Just keep in mind that when you bid on something, there is a buyer's premium. So there's a fee that the buyer pays on top of whatever the hammer price is. And I know that's spelled out on the website, but if somebody hasn't bid in an auction before, that's just something to keep in mind when they're deciding how much they want to spend.
That's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also to say that the website is beautiful. And if you go on there, there's
Mm.
many pictures of all the items and there's
Yeah.
some information as well. So it's great to just look through. There's also the auction book that's available. And does that include pictures of all the items in it?
Yeah, so the catalog has pictures of every item. There are more pictures on the website because for each item on the website, you have the front, the back. If there's a screen match image that they could provide, you can see that on the website, or they might have a link to a screen match, something that we weren't able to put into the catalog. But each item is pictured, and all of the information about the provenance of the item, how it was used, and where it came from, is in the catalog as well.
Are these items up on display now for people to see?
They are not. They don't have a physical display because right now they have items in their warehouse.
Yeah.
There's not an exhibit of them.
Is there anything else that people should know about the auction or any other items that you want to highlight?
I'm excited about it. I think it's been a really fun way. I've heard from people who worked at Henson or worked on projects. And of course, in order to do the research for this auction, we've had to reach out to lots of people, because a lot of times things didn't have a maker's name or something like that. And we wanted to, as much as possible, provide that information to the collectors who are going to go home with these items. So it's been a really fun project for me personally to be able to do that kind of research and look into it. I have to say, Julian's did a really great job with the cataloging, especially with the Age of Resistance items. They worked with our creature shop in Los Angeles with people who worked on the production to, again, make sure all the information was correct for the different puppets and props and how they were used. So that's been a fun project, and very different for me than the work I do, say, with the curators from the museum. It's a different sort of approach, but there was a curatorial eye when it came to planning the auction. We really were looking for things to be able to include that had meaning to our company history.
Hmm.
So, like Dog City was such an important project for Jim. It was part of the Jim Henson Hour. he had so much fun with it. Worked with a lot of great artists. Bruce McNally designed a lot of those characters. So it was really fun to be able to include a couple Dog City puppets in this. There are Dog City puppets at the Museum of the Moving Image. They have a big collection of Dog City puppets down at the Center for Puppetry Arts. So it was fun to make these dogs available to fans as well.
And they do look adorable. I think
Yeah,
they're
no, they're
so
really, and again, our creature shop had so much fun restoring them. They are fans, the people that work in our shop. And a lot of them grew up with this stuff. And so for them to be able to work on the characters from Secret Life of Toys or something like that was really fun for them. And we, went back into the archives and found photos and film clips and patterns and things like that, and really collaborated to try to make things look as much as they could, in their original state.
It sounds like a tremendous amount of work. How long have you been working on this?
I guess it's probably been about a year and a half. My colleague Susie Tofty went out to LA to work with our colleague Shannon Robles on the dark crystal materials when they came off the ship, and sorting through all of those. And it took a lot of people to help get that stuff organized. And then, of course, our creature shops, both in LA and in New York, have been working on this as well. It's been a company-wide effort.
I certainly appreciate your time today and for giving us more information about this auction.
Sure, it's my pleasure. And I hope people are enjoying watching from the sidelines, even if they're not bidding, because I think it's a window into our work and into our history that is from a sort of through a different lens than maybe they've been seeing it before.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks again to Karen Falk for joining us today and sharing some insights about the upcoming Henson Company auction and some Muppet history. For more information about the auction, visit the Julian's Auctions website. And for all the latest on Muppet news and analysis, visit us at toughpigs.com.